Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Sports and Stuff, hosted by Patrick Haggerty, yours truly, where I'll be talking about mostly sports because I really like sports, but also other stuff in case there's other stuff that I talk about. And if I have guests, then they'll probably want to talk about other stuff as well, especially since I'll have a lot of comedians on the show, and therefore we'll probably just talk about things that we find funny and try to make each other laugh. But for now, I'm going to be talking about sports for the most part, and I'm going to be getting people who like sports on the show. So, I'm a big sports fan. My favorites would go baseball, football, hockey, right now, for sure, from now on. Golf was up there for a while when Tiger Woods was really good, and hockey was right in there also because of the Olympics. But now I really like hockey because it's a cool sport. So I'm into baseball the most, though, which is what I'll be talking about mostly today in regards to the Yankees. The Yankees are my team, and this is January 3rd as I film this episode. And so we're about a month and 10 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting for spring training, which means that we are kind of on the second leg of the off season. It feels like we're closer to the season starting than we are to the last season having ended, which is a big difference in the feeling of the baseball schedule. So as we go forward, you start to think about, this is the team that they have right now is going to be close to what they have going forward. Now this year in particular, the offseason has been slow. There hasn't been much in the way of big signings happening as of right now. Ohtani's gone. Yamamoto did not sign with the Yankees. The Yankees are still looking for starting pitching after trading away almost their entire starting pitching depth for Juan Soto, which was sorely needed because their offense was so terrible last year. But the offense was helped a lot by the Juan Soto trade and the Alex Verdugo trade. The Yankees badly needed outfielders. They got two big outfielders. They also got Grisham, I think is his name, Trent Grisham, the center fielder from the Padres in that same Soto trade, which is better than a lot of their players that they had last year because Grisham can play outfield really well. And the Yankees last year had players who could both not hit and also not field. They managed to get outfielders who were kind of like light hitting righty and lefty corner outfielders, which you don't want a light hitting corner outfielder no matter what, but they also couldn't field. So that was a twofer that the Yankees had on a regular basis last year in the likes of a Willie Calhoun, a Jake Bauers, players who were not naturally gifted outfielders, and also their hitting was at league average at best. During their best streaks, they were league average. So they got Juan Soto, who's probably the second best lefty hitter in baseball, to replace some of those terrible players. Juan Soto can't field because the Yankees can't quite get players who can do everything, but at least they have a player who can do one thing, which is different than what they normally have or what they had last year, which was a bunch of players who couldn't really do anything correctly. They couldn't do anything well. They have Alex Verdugo, who's a really good fielder and a good hitter, kind of an all-around solid player. He was a Red Sox, so he's going to have to play well unless he wants to get booed. But when he was a Red Sox, he was all pissy and moany about getting stuff thrown at him by the fans. There was a fan who threw a baseball at Alex Verdugo, and he was really upset. He was playing left field, and he got a baseball thrown at him, which I found weird because he's a baseball player, and he got a baseball thrown at him. That's a little weird that he would get that upset about it because, if you throw a knife at a guy, that's never okay. But if you throw a baseball at a guy, all you have to do is say, "Hey, catch," and then it's okay for you to throw the baseball at him. But Verdugo is a Yankee now. He shaved his beard. He'll play. He'll bat seventh, maybe lead off at times against righties. But if he was the only move, that would have been bad. Him being the secondary move in the offseason offensively is actually pretty good. That's a good move. Verdugo, very nice. Soto, very, very nice, especially with Rizzo hopefully being back and healthy, Judge being healthy the whole season. But even if he's not, you kind of have Soto now to help if Judge is out for 2 months, which seems to happen every so often, every other season-ish. He's out for a month or two. If he is, then at least you have another top 5 player in baseball, hitter in baseball, who can fill in the gap and be your 2-hitter during the time that Judge is out. You actually have Judge insurance, which Stanton was supposed to be Judge insurance. Giancarlo Stanton was supposed to be Aaron Judge insurance when you got him, but he was for one season and maybe 2021 as well. He was in 2018. He was great. 2021 he was really good. Also, and every other year, so that means 19, 20, 22, 23. He hasn't been good enough to be what you need him to be, which is your second best hitter to Aaron Judge, which means that you really want him to be really, really good. Because the second best hitter after Aaron Judge is anybody. Aaron Judge is the best hitter in baseball, so you want to have a good hitter. You want to have a great hitter as your second best hitter, unless you don't want to win the World Series. You don't need anything. The Reds don't have hitters that good, but they're not a team that's supposed to win the World Series. So, Cashman, Brian Cashman, George Steinbrenner's son, Hal Steinbrenner, will say, oh, well, we have players who can play these positions. Yeah, not well enough to make the playoffs last year, obviously. And even in the years where they're good enough to make the playoffs, is not good enough to be good in the playoffs. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm a spoiled Yankees fan, potentially, in my lifetime at least. But they are a team that's supposed to be great, which is not weird. There are teams that are supposed to be great. If you're supposed to be great and you're kind of you're only okay for 4 or so straight years. If the mid-2000s Indianapolis Colts got knocked out in the first round every year for 4 straight years, their coach would have been fired. Their offensive coordinator would have been fired. This is not just the Yankees. Oh, the Yankees, they've the most championships in American sports history. It's also that they're just a team that's supposed to be really good, and they haven't been good enough. So that's why Yankees fans are upset when they are upset. But going back to specific roster construction thoughts, the Yankees offense is pretty set, pretty solid. We can go down the line if we want. Here, it is a podcast, so we'll talk in depth about these the positions and how they shape out. You have Jose Trevino at catcher. We'll go down the line. Jose Trevino at catcher. And Austin Wells as well. He's a lefty. Trevino's a righty. They're going to split time. Generally speaking, lefties play more than righties because there's more righty pitchers. But Trevino is the best defensive catcher in baseball. He's going to play a lot. He'll catch for Garrett Cole, most likely. Garrett Cole likes pitching to good defensive catchers. So he'll probably catch Cole. He'll catch all the lefties. And Wells will play the other games, which is still going to be plenty. They're probably going to split it almost entirely 50-50, the two catchers, unless Wells starts getting onto a 25 home run pace and is batting 280 with 340 OBP and is actually a great offensive catcher, then he'll start playing some more, which would be awesome. Anthony Rizzo, the first baseman for the New York Yankees. He should be back from his concussion that the Yankees tried to hide for 2 months, or didn't know was the case for 2 months, because their medical team is apparently very bad at their jobs. But Anthony Rizzo should be back and ready to rock and roll. It's very nice. As we mentioned, Soto's there, so it's very nice that Rizzo now is the second best lefty hitter on the Yankees. That's a good second best lefty hitter, presumably. As long as Soto does his thing, Rizzo number 2, that's a great number 2 in terms of lefties. If the lineup goes Judge 2, Soto 3, Stanton 4, just to break up the lefties, then Rizzo 5. Rizzo batting 5th. Historically, if you can have the Yankees lineups in the past, the 09 Yankees, what I think of, if your number 5 hitter is a beast, then you have a great lineup. If your number 5 hitter is someone you think, man, that's a tough number 5 hitter, everybody's going to have a good 1 through 4. Any team in baseball, or most teams in baseball, is going to have a good 1 through 4. But then if there's a big drop-off after 5, it means that your offense probably isn't very good. Rizzo at number 5 hitter, first base, very nice. Gleyber Torres is playing second base coming into the year. At the recording of this, he's always on the trade block, but Gleyber Torres was great last year. He had over 800 OPS. He's a second baseman with those kind of numbers. He's legit. Same idea. Now Gleyber would be batting 6th with the way the lineup is configured, or might be configured, and you have a great number 6 hitter, which again, going back to my 09 Yankees, you would have Teixeira and A-Rod batting 3rd or 4th in whatever order. I think it was actually A-Rod Teixeira, A-Rod 3, Teixeira 4, and then 5 would either be Matsui or Posada, and then you would have the other one be batting 6th, obviously, then Robinson Cano batting 7th, then Nick Swisher batting 8th, and then batting 9th, you'd have Melky Cabrera usually, which is the closest to a normal of that type of hitter that the Yankees had that year, but he probably would have been a serviceable 6 hitter, Melky Cabrera. So you want to stack your lineup if you want to win. You don't have to. If you don't care about winning, then you don't need to do anything. You don't need to stack your lineup if you don't care if the team's going to win. So the idea is that if you want the team to be really good, you want to stack your lineup. You want to have a 3 hitter as your 3 hitter. You want a 3 hitter as your 4 hitter. You want a 4 hitter as your 5 hitter. You want a 4 hitter as your 6 hitter, and then so on and so forth. You need to be loaded in order to really dominate some of these teams. You got a lot of really great offenses out there. For the Yankees to have one of those dominant offenses, you need to stack the lineup and have great hitters throughout. So Gleyber Torres playing second base, most likely batting 6th a lot of the time, is pretty good. He might lead off some of the time, which is a great leadoff hitter also. Great. Volpe playing shortstop, moving on. It'll be in his second year. Hopefully he starts hitting more than he did last year. He was 1 Gold Glove, and he deserved it. He had a bad early part of the season, but he played well. He was a good defensive shortstop. He was kind of rangy, and he made a lot of really cool plays. So even the layman's eye test would say that Volpe is pretty legit as a defensive shortstop. Offensively, he hit for a lot of power. He didn't do much. He didn't do anything else well enough. He didn't walk enough. He didn't hit for batting average well enough. He didn't even really steal enough bases based on what he was thought to be. He was thought to be this insane stolen base threat who was going to steal 50 bases is what a lot of people felt like he was going to do. I think he stole somewhere in the 25 to 30 range, which is good, but they changed the rules in order for guys to be able to steal bases more. So it feels like that's kind of, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can steal that many bases if he has a full season of at-bats. So Volpe needs to just be better as a hitter. But to the point I was making before, if he's batting 8th or 9th, which is probably what he's going to be batting, then if he hits 25 homers again, then whatever, then that's fine. Then he can just bat 8th or 9th, have a 220 batting average and hit 25 homers. That's a great 8 hitter, which he just wasn't our 8 hitter last year. He was our 6 hitter a lot of the time. Sometimes they tried to lead him off, which is not going to happen that much unless he's really hitting, because there's going to be a lot of guys who could be leading off. Whereas last year, everything fell apart. So you have now you have DJ LeMahieu, who I'm going to mention in just a bit, Gleyber Torres, Alex Verdugo as your kind of clear leadoff options. But if Anthony Volpe is batting 280 and he has 15 stolen bases through the first 2 months, and he is hitting lots of homers and has a good batting average, good on-base percentage, and is legitimately good, then it makes sense to lead him off because he's fast, he steals bases. I don't know how much you want him to steal any bases when you have Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in front of him, so it's going to be tough to see the idea that it makes sense to have Volpe batting leadoff. He might be more of a Robinson Cano in his career trajectory rather than a Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, his first season, it took him about a month for him to go from the 9 hitter to the leadoff, and then he never didn't bat 1 or 2. He actually batted 3 a couple times as in some of his best seasons, but he batted 9th in his first month of his career, and then he never batted 9th or lower than 3 for the rest of his career. Volpe is probably not going to do that. Derek Jeter was one of the best hitters in the history of baseball. So, you can't expect Volpe to be on that same kind of level. Next up, third base, DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu is another guy who it's really nice that he's not going to have as much pressure on him to be really good. You have Soto, who's presumably going to be your second best hitter, and even leadoff is kind of covered in a lot of ways. So if DJ just has a nice solid season, his season last year, if you look at it, wasn't that bad. It's just that the Yankees had a bunch of guys whose seasons were not that bad, and then a bunch of guys whose seasons were really bad, and they didn't have enough guys who actually had good seasons. DJ LeMahieu was one of those guys who didn't have a good season. It was fine. If you had him and one other guy have a season like that, but you have another couple guys who had really good seasons, then it wouldn't have been a big deal. He would have slotted in nicely as a leadoff hitter, as a 6 hitter. That'd been fine, but you needed him to be one of your best hitters because the rest of the team stunk. So he can kind of do his thing now. He can kind of do his thing as an aging veteran slap hitter kind of guy who is probably going to bat 260, have an OBP of 330-ish, not very much in terms of slugging, and play a solid third base, and be your 7 hitter, or your leadoff hitter and be a nice little leadoff hitter. So he's him, Verdugo, and even Gleyber. Gleyber you kind of hope is going to be good, but Verdugo and LeMahieu are going to be guys who just kind of slot in. They can just do their thing and have a nice, decent kind of season, and that's going to be perfectly adequate because you have a couple legitimate sluggers in the lineup who can kind of carry the rest of the team. Moving on to the outfield, you have Soto. Soto's going to play somewhere in the outfield. It seems like what they're planning on doing is having Judge in center, Verdugo in left, and Soto in right for the most part, because the Yankee Stadium right field is really small, and Juan Soto is a bad outfielder. So they want him to be able to play in the small part of the outfield. Juan Soto is one of the top 4 hitters in baseball. You got Judge, Ohtani, maybe Trout. It's probably Soto's number 3 after Judge and Ohtani. And, so the Yankees have 2 of the top 3 hitters in baseball, as it turns out, which is just what the lineup is built around. It's built around Judge and Soto. Judge, so just to move, they pair together. That's why the offense is going to be potentially really, really good, is because you have Judge and Soto. Then Verdugo in left field. Again, just one of those. It's nice to have a handful of solid hitters, just good hitters. They don't need to be great, but the reason they don't need to be great is partially because you have 2 excellent hitters, 2 top 3 type hitters, and also you're surrounded by other pretty good hitters. Whereas last year the Yankees had a left fielder who couldn't hit. They also had a catcher who couldn't hit. So now they can kind of slot in Trevino now, who can't hit at all, and it's acceptable because they have so many guys who can hit. And last year they also started the season with Aaron Hicks on the roster, with Josh Donaldson on the roster, with Giancarlo Stanton, quote unquote, their starting left fielder, and he can play 2 or 3 days a week in the outfield at most. And so, which means that whoever your backup left fielder is actually your starting left fielder, and that was Oswaldo Cabrera, who is not a starting left fielder for any team, let alone a team that has aspirations to win a division / do well in the playoffs / win the World Series. The Yankees dropped the ball on that one, which would bring me to the pitching. But first, I'll mention Giancarlo Stanton as the DH. Another instance of, just do whatever you're gonna do. Just hit homers and bat 220, and hopefully you're protected in the lineup a little bit more because there's more good hitters surrounding you, and just hit a lot of dingers, just like you have the past few years, and with no batting average. But again, if he's your, lineups are different now. It used to be that you'd have your best hitter batting 3rd, your best power hitter batting 4th, and then your second best power hitter batting 5th. That is more akin to what today's 2, 3, 4 is. So he's batting 4th, but that's kind of like an old school 5 hitter, which means that you just want that guy to hit for power. It doesn't, your number 5 hitter back in the day when it was the 3, 4, 5 as your best hitters, your 5, you really you don't care about batting average, really. You just want him to hit 30 homers and have a solid on-base percentage, but you certainly don't expect him to have a good batting average. And so Giancarlo Stanton kind of slots in as that type of hitter, which, he's more similar to the Hideki Matsui category of what we would need out of him, the 09 Hideki Matsui. Of course, Hideki Matsui was the World Series MVP that year, which, hey, Stanton is good in big games, so that might be exactly what we're hoping for, is that he's just a solid hitter during the regular season, and then he figures it out during the postseason when he thinks, okay, I can grit through the injuries that I'm constantly going through, which is always the case. It seems like he's injured all the time, and that he says to himself, I feel like I see this in his eyes sometimes, where he says to himself, all right, I'm going to hit a home run right now. I can make myself not be in pain for one swing, and that's all I can do because I'm just always hurt. So he just seems to be injured all the time, which is fine. if you have a team surrounding him, that's really good. Which the Yankees didn't have last year. They kind of counted on him, and really even the couple years before that, they counted on him too much to be their 2A to Rizzo, their second best hitter with Rizzo. He's not that good anymore. He is too big, and he gets hurt too much. So that's he needs to be looked at more similarly to like a Darryl Strawberry from the 90s Yankees. Just considered, oh yeah, he's a good hitter. He's got power, and if you need him in a pinch, he'll hit a homer for you. But then the next 4 bats, he's going to strike out. That's acceptable. That's a good player. It's just not your number 3 hitter or your number 4 hitter. You need that to be your down lineup type hitter. So the offense looking pretty good. Bench, we could do that in another episode. For now, we'll talk about the pitching. Pitching is the problem. So that's the issue with the current Yankees roster is the pitching. Got Garrett Cole is the best pitcher in baseball, so that's nice. Which, to be fair, in years past, the Yankees have had pitching problems, and those pitching problems revolved around not having an ace. That is not the case this year. They do have an ace. They have the ace. They have the best pitcher in baseball. He throws the most innings. He is the most dominant. He gives up the least runs most of the time. He's one of the most effective pitchers on any given year. If he's not, last year he was the best pitcher in baseball. Next year he might be like the 4th best pitcher in baseball. And then the year after that, he'll be the 2nd best pitcher in baseball. There's times when a guy will have a great year and eclipse him in a particular year, but he's just so consistent and he's so clearly an ace. Technically you only have to be one of the top 30 pitchers in baseball in order to be an ace. He's within the top 5 in a bad year. He's especially when it comes to pitching innings, which is something that doesn't happen much anymore in term with many pitchers. He is one of the few that can do that consistently and do that every year. And you're confident that he's going to do that this year. The rest of the rotation looks pretty bad as of right now, without having made any trades, without having made any signings for any additional pitching, after having traded away so much in the Juan Soto trade, specifically Verdugo trade also to some extent, but the Soto trade more specifically because they were a bunch of starting pitchers that the Yankees traded. Which it is weird that this rotation looks so weak, because it's almost the exact same rotation that the Yankees were going into with last year. And going into last year, everyone was saying that the Yankees had the best rotation in baseball with Carlos Rodon and Nestor Cortez and Luis Severino and Frankie Montas as their starting rotation, thinking, oh, well, they have all these great pitchers. They're all potential aces that the Yankees have. The Yankees still have Carlos Rodon and Nestor Cortez, who are probably the 2 best pitchers in that conversation other than Cole, but no one trusts either of them. So you have Carlos Rodon, who was hurt and bad last year, Nestor, who was hurt and kind of bad, but it just seemed like he was hurt. So his badness just seemed like he was hurt, but he might have broken down. His body just might not be able to take 4 or 5 straight seasons of being a major league starting pitcher. He came out of nowhere. He was, he probably tricked a few teams for an entire year, which is definitely possible. These guys are really good, so they can definitely trick other teams for a long time. And he did that, and so there's a chance that he'll have a real drop. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be good. He's not going to be a 2-starter. So the Yankees need a number 2. I don't think Nestor's going to be a number 2. I think he's going to be healthy. I think he's going to be pretty good. He'll be a solid 3 to 5 starter, no doubt. I am very confident that I think there's a really good shot at him being a solid number 3, which is fine if you have the rest of the rotation, which the Yankees have a 1. They have then Clark Schmidt is their other for sure pitcher, who is probably, in terms of health and in terms of just kind of durability, more than just health, also pitching innings and pitching quality innings consistently, is probably the Yankees' number 2 starter, which is really bad. You can't have Clark Schmidt as your number 2, and he's not really, he's your number 2 only in the basis of that he'll pitch, that he's going to pitch. But Nestor Cortes is probably your number 2 in terms of confidence in that he'll be pretty good. Carlos Rodon, it's hard to tell because he just gets hurt all the time. He got hurt all the time before the Yankees signed him, and he only really had 2 good seasons even before the Yankees signed him, and one of those good seasons, he got hurt part of it. He didn't pitch like ace-like innings or even number 2 like innings. He's just a guy who gets hurt all the time. So even if he's if that's a fair ask, is it a fair ask to say, oh, well, let's just have him be really good for 130 innings? That's not good. That's not a number 2 starter, and that's like that's their best case scenario, and that's probably what you're expecting out of Nestor too, is that he's going to be pretty good for 130 innings. So you just don't have nearly enough innings out of it. Clark Schmidt, similar, maybe 160 innings because he's young. He'll be able to ramp it up and pitch a legitimate amount of innings. But that's like your second most that you have on the team. And then after that, there really isn't a 5 starter. They have a few rookies or a few young guys who could be your potential number 5, but really it doesn't exist. So the Yankees need to go sign one really good starter, like legitimate number 2 or 3 starter at least. And also, they need to get a depth starting pitcher who just can maybe push Clark out of the rotation, or be in the bullpen pitching 2-3 innings all the time. That way, when they need to bring him into the rotation, he's ready to throw 60-70 pitches right away, and then he can work up and become a starter. So they need 2 starters, and really, it's not even that they need a full depth starter as that second starter. They kind of need like a 5-ish. They need a guy who might push Clark Schmidt out of the rotation, and they've made a couple trades for guys who are in that general realm. Like there may be guys who you'd be confident being your 7 starter, someone who would come into the rotation in May if 2 guys were hurt, and you hope that it's only for 2 starts at most. That's who they're currently signing right now and making trades for, which is obviously not enough. So they need to make a big signing plus a kind of medium signing or trade. They need to make a big signing or trade plus a medium signing or trade. And there's a good chance that if they make that trade, they're going to still have to trade from their starting pitching depth, so they end up hurting themselves to some extent on that as well. So the hitting is in a pretty good shape now. The pitching just seems like it doesn't exist. The good thing is that the Yankees have at least had some success in creating pitchers and making it so that they can be some semblance of close to good enough to be a functional starting rotation. The Yankees have shown no ability for that in recent years offensively. So they needed to get proven major league hitters to fill in some of the gaps. Plus, also they needed to get one of the best hitters in baseball because their hitting coaches are so bad that they can only work with guys who are absolutely great, like an Aaron Judge, like an Anthony Rizzo. So now they have Juan Soto, who can hopefully go against their one glaring weakness, which is creating hitters and teaching hitters. And then in pitching, if they do spit the bit, which it seems like they're gonna, and they're not gonna get the type of pitchers that Yankees fans are hoping that they're gonna get, that they can get some decent starting pitchers and then turn them into good starting pitchers, which is it's hard to justify doing that because it seems like when they decide, okay, we're going to make the hitting good this year, and then the pitching's really bad that year, and then the next year they say, okay, well then we're going to make the pitching really good this year, and then that year the hitting's really bad, and they just can't seem to figure out how to do both. And the way I think of it is that Brian Cashman becomes a very sleepy baby, and he cannot function in doing two things at once, like hitting and pitching. It's like, well, get me some help here. And so they say, well, this is your job. You're the general manager of the New York Yankees. It's kind of important for you to do both the hitting and the pitching and make both of them good. And he says, whoa, I thought I just had to do one at a time in a given year. I didn't realize I had to do both. Which, hey, you know what? Work is hard. No one likes their job. The bullpen is solid, if not kind of top light as opposed to top heavy. It's depthy. There's a lot of pitchers that you like, but so you have what are the names? Loizaga and Holmes and Canely are your top three relievers, which, if that's your closer mix, that's pretty good. That it reminds me of kind of the 2003 Red Sox, where they had Embry and I blank on this guy. But they didn't have really a closer. They just had a mix and match of good relievers who Tomlin. I think it's Tomlin. They had a mix and match of good, solid relievers who filled in and would pitch the 7th, 8th, and 9th. They call it closer by committee. And the 2003 Red Sox were really good at that. They lost. The next year they got a closer, and then they won. So it kind of shows that you need a closer. And that's usually the case, is that teams that don't have closers lose to teams that do have closers. Even though you can go pretty far without a closer, but eventually the teams with the closers are like, oh, well, we know exactly who we're going to pitch, and he's great, which is why he's pitching the 9th. So the Yankees could probably use a closer, could definitely need a starting pitcher, and then offensively, they could actually probably use a bench bat. Gio Urshela would be awesome. But so they need a lot of stuff. Which, hey, maybe that'll be for a different podcast when they get all those things. So that'll be good. But yeah, I talked almost 40 minutes about the Yankees only, which I could probably go longer. But for now, that'll be the end of the first episode. So like and subscribe. I'll put that at the beginning. Oh, like and subscribe. That's going to be at the beginning. All right. See ya.